people. And I'm not just saying that as a figure of speech. The cellular waves, there's plenty of data out there to compare it to. The woodpecker signal, any wireless signals. Just think of any time you get a whiff of something, whether it's diesel or the coolant, strict antifreeze, the smell of the power steering fluid, which is also automatic transmission fluid, the gosh darn gear lube, or I can't think of the other acronym, the Valvoline 75W90 gear lube. Transaxle, I think they also have the same lubrication. The gasoline, as in benzene, and the ethanol alcohol in there, tell me that you can't isolate some of those different smells, and what effect does it have to your awakeness, strict then therefore your access to the consciousness. And now we're talking about both physical awakeness, but what about the awakeness in the context of your access to faculties, and some of those faculties then would be gateways to other faculties. So do you see what I mean by wake up, people? It's not just physically awake, because you can be physically awake, like wired awake, for example, and you know damn well you don't feel good. The expression of wired awake to do with coffee. So yet, for example, if you take some red wine and compare, you're going to find other times, or sometimes, that the red wine, you might feel more awake with a little bit of red wine, depending on what you've eaten. Well, how can that be? Okay? And again, there's the physical awakeness, and there's the awakeness in the context of your cognitive and or faculty functions. So without further ado, let me go into the car and see how it's going to run. With great trepidation, as I said, because I'm worried about the balance relevant to the rods. I do not want to throw a rod. Okay, now you see it's rocking quite a bit, unfortunately. But I'm going to try. So that didn't change it. My feeling on the rocking is potentially running lean, but with the EGR open, that's still, not completely open, but partially open. That's still a different question. So let me see if I can modify this. That doesn't seem to do it. So I'm going to assume, because the smell in the exhaust, that's a leaner condition. Now you see how bad that smoke in there? And that is theoretically coming from, although I'm not 100% certain, it's coming off the EGR side there, or it's getting off light on there right now, or that's coming from the steering bump, or simply from. Increase the rocking. It's definitely smoking like crazy. Let me see where that's coming from. Stretching over the run like that. You can't get a good feeling for it. So you notice that's a little bit higher RPM. Around 1800 RPM. It runs much smoother. Yet at this level, it should be injecting more fuel because the engine's under that much load. Yet again, look, disconnected. So unless those suckers are leaking, this car should be bogging down more now. So that bouncing at that point, I suspect is to do with the change of the manifold pressure. Experimenting with the EGR being partially open, and I only have it partially mechanically open. I could not get the, it's a stepper motor, and I don't have a way to activate it. So you can see how drastically I have to be able to reduce. And yet the airflow, where is it? Completely ununderstandable. My hand should be sucking in there with that volume of activity, and it's not. So these are still opening and closing, so that should be pumping air and compressing it. And with the heat, if you've ever felt the compressor, that sucker gets hot. So explain to me for yourselves why sealed. Next to no airflow. How is it operating? It makes no sense. I still think it's coming from smell-wise from the steering pump, but yet since I've been playing around with the EGR, pissed off about stupid heater circuits in there. Like, yo, dude, you're gonna charge how much for that goddamn thing? Real slowly, I want to bring it up. So if it was a matter of only an imbalance because of the injectors being unplugged, and let's assume I'm leaking some or more. Okay, then you would have to see at the lower level that they're running rich, and that's why it's running now. Otherwise, with that 2,000 plus load on there, how is that engine operating more smoothly? Doesn't make sense now, does it? And this is not pre-tested. This is all live. So you can see it's, still leaving something to be desired, but let me shut it down because it's getting quite a bit warm. With this experiment, I'm going to want to look at that. You can say that's rough, but I'm sure some of you have seen engines a lot worse than that, for 2 injectors disconnected, and before it started to fire over on those 2 cylinders with the 2 plugs off. I'm assuming that's because of it's a horizontally opposed engine, so it's in some ways more balanced than if it was inline, slant, or a V configuration. So my guess is if I took the EGR back off, or if I could just reduce it some, it would be running much differently here at idle, but not sure then how it would run, because with the EGR, remember, any unburned gases are also coming back into that chamber to the extent that it will spread across the plenum. So you really need to think about the concepts that are right there in front of your face. And this is why they want to switch you to electrical, because the gasoline vehicle can be much more efficient. Even this computer operated shit, if they were designing the computers correctly. They're not designing the computers correctly. But again, remember that computer is not needed to become a more efficient vehicle. There is some advantages that could occur with some of the computers and sensors and stuff like that, but it's not needed. The cars in the past were tunable between vacuum, electromechanical, and vacuum type advances, all technology that was already proven. And all with the invasion of the different foreigners, not only foreign, but alien coming in, trying to be, just that much more cheap than the ones that were already here. So this should raise multiple questions. Now I want to turn it off. I went back twice to the exhaust. It's extremely lean, as if I had been over the highway, like you'll look at one of my others. Let me go and check it again. So I would call it extremely lean. And it got there much quicker because we're using the heat. And not only the heat, any unburned fuel, some of that is then coming back up instead of getting wasted in the catalytic converter. So you're going to extend the life of your catalytic converter. You'll need less of a catalytic converter. So there's still some potential advantage of the catalytic converter because of inefficiencies that can occur even when you're making a vapor. But by using the EGR for the different properties that can be gained out of the exhaust gas recirculation, other than the unburned fuel. And one thing that you could potentially do again, going back to the original oxygen sensors, did not have heater circuits in it. Why? Because there was no need for it. We had people who knew how to design things better. The ones that are here now, wherever they came from, whichever alien planet, somehow they just can't think correctly. I can't explain it better than that. When you see that clip from the NASA scientist and the shit that he said, I don't know how he can go in public and, and not feel ashamed, but nonetheless. So, how long has that been running? 10 minutes already now. Let me shut it down, and we're going to do the next experiment. Let's try disconnecting a wire. So, I wish I knew where exactly that is coming from. As you can see, it's smoking like the dickens. Or smoking like a chimney might be a more appropriate analogy. So, I'm not sure. That's actually the cam sensors on that side. So, I know we had them both there. I'm only curious to take them both right away with them warmed. Let's check and see how much slop accumulated on there. So, for even potentially plugs that are we still recording? Yeah, I don't know how long it'll record. I have no idea. I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to upload anything, but I can tell you, again, we can look at this one. You can see how much is coming down on the end there, and even getting into the bottom of the tip. So it's clear as day that one there should be running rougher, you would think, than the number one cylinder, because the number one, it ain't got as much coming down in there. So here we go. Now you see they're both disconnected, plus 2 injectors. So now let's find out what happens. Now we might get a blast of oil coming out there. I don't know how that's going to work. Now again, if you normally think about it, already the car should not have fired like this with the 2 injectors disconnected. And you see, under normal thinking would tell you as I accelerate, if it was running rough, certainly if these injectors were leaking, both of them, then you could say it makes sense that when I'm accelerating, but it doesn't when you go and smell from the exhaust standpoint. It did not smell rich. So that would tend to, loosely at least, indicate that these are not leaking very much or at all on this bank. And would put it more than towards that bank. But again, we can't rule out that they're not leaking. However, if they are leaking, then it makes sense why when you're opening up the throttle, it's going to run smoother because it's running way too rich at an idle, and maybe just a percentage, or still a greater percentage, is getting burnt through the catalytic converter. So, however, if they are leaking less or not at all, and you're opening up, now explain how that vehicle's running so much smoother as you're going up around 1,800, 2,000 RPM when that's under a greater load. Should not be. Now, let's take it further. You already heard it before when it was cold, how it wanted to fire over. Now let's see what happens. Okay, now do you see what I'm trying to tell you? This car should not be running. And you can hear those. I don't want to get shot. Well, you can hear that is running. Should not be running. Okay? Look at that, even through clothing. Look, see that? That is really neat. And it's able to arc onto the clothing. Now I'll explain that one. Look what it's going on to the gas coming out of from the breather tube. Let's put it up here so we don't lose, I'm going to get shocked by that. Ah, I'm feeling that. We don't want to damage the computer either. Okay, there we go. Now slowly. You see that? I should tell you something there. Look. They're going to tell you that this cannot conduct. I'm even feeling it up my hand here. Look at that. See that? Can you see that down there? Let me see if it's coming on there. See it? Yeah, I can see you can see that. And that's with a lot of light on there. That's the breather hose disconnected. Explain that. Another anomaly or phenomena or bullshit. More important characteristics are not being, and with this here, I'm getting shocked off of whatever this piece is called up front. So this tells you that there's other characteristics that you need to learn that you're only going to learn by tinkering around yourself. Ah! Holy Judas, that is a shocker. That one got me. So now you got to see that one live, plus these others that you're not going to get to see under the normal indoctrinating paradigms, unfortunately. So it can be very, very exciting. I'm going to try to hold that in position there when you learn to take some time and cautiously play around. Okay, so obviously my concern is about the imbalance in part. Now let's accelerate slowly. Very good spark. Oh, hold on. I got to try to get that off of there. Get the screwdriver and hope I don't get shocked. Yeah, don't want to stay up there for nothing. Wait. You don't want that going into electronics. I can't afford to fry my computer. Oh man, that just wants to go like mad. And still sparking even there. Okay. So now, do you see what's going on here, folks? Remember, this is not supposed to happen. This is not what they tell you. This cannot exist. Well, at least I get to check my coil out the hard way, but I don't want to damage it, you know. And how long is it now already running? About 5 minutes? Oh my goodness, that thing has got guts to it. So it could very well be getting drowned out by the oil down there. Boy, I'm having a hard time with that. I cannot get that to stay for nothing with all that rocking. Okay, there we go. Hopefully I got it now. Okay, now I want to increase the revolutions carefully. Now you see how it's smoothing out. Not perfect by any means. As you can see, it's becoming more balanced. I'd be curious to see what's happening with the spark right now. If there's even any spark at all. Okay, that's that spark. That's not mega spark. Okay, now let me go back and smell the exhaust. Again, we've got 2 cylinders running right now. However, you see with the plug out, you saw the sparking back here at the breather tube. Yet this is said to you, ow, holy Judas, to be an insulation. So even where you can't see, you saw no spark where I got my finger in between those two. There's no oil pathway conducting back there. There's only isolated moisture on that. Now internally, however, there is the vapor coming off the valve cover. However, remember, they tell you that that hose is an insulated material. Yet you should go and take your voltmeter and go and measure your exhaust stream. Now let me go back to the exhaust and go and use your very strong gas analyzer. Okay, so are we still recording? I guess we are. So this would be great if this was live by comparison, so I would just be throwing it up there and getting it out. And I'll probably end up doing it that way. So I just come from back there, and it smells now cleaner than it did before. It smells like as if I have come off a run on the highway for 10 minutes when it, after I took it out of the front wheel drive quasi-limp mode to, stop that torque binding until I could learn more about that. And it is smelling, after I put it into, took that fuse back out and put it into all-wheel drive mode, it's now smelling like if I came off the highway for 10 minutes, it smells clean. You can be back there and breathe the air by comparison. And take a look. You have 2 cylinders sitting open. And make sure we can see. I don't want to get shot, because you clearly saw an insulative device breaking down. And I don't know if these are running 30, if they're only running 10,000 volts or 10 kilovolts. So 2 cylinders and it's running. So now you see the importance of studying your different designs of motors and your intakes, your so-called ignition systems. Because remember, you're still compressing your air, and if you have gas that can be pulled across there, the EGR gas, for example, and if these would happen to be leaking, can you still have a compression ignition? So I can't tell you if it's doing any type of firing on this side. By the rocking, we know it's in balance, but we don't know exactly what weighs. You cannot assume that it is not firing here, because I have raised the temperature now, and it is possible that you're having a lower amount of compression ignition there. So your mind should just be, or your thoughts and your mind, your consciousness, your inquisitiveness should just be like off the map right now. And I don't know anyone, except for all of us lying about when we block it from our thoughts, how bad we want to get rid of that goddamn stink. And here's proof that you can do it, and it does not take complicated technology. The technology that's here can be used differently to clean up the air with the existing fuel without needing high test fuel or high octane fuel, and without needing god-awful complicated devices. Look, you do not need that goddamn computer. Come here and smell the exhaust. And is it necessarily limited to this motor? I think not. So, I'm going to cut it off there. I don't want to put undue strain on it, because you can see it is rocking quite a bit. But that's another good 10, 15 minutes right there. Temperatures are obviously getting up there, but still within controllable range. So, thank you very much. I'm going to consider how to reassemble things here. Now, I want to test this one more time here. Hope I don't get shocked by it, but let's take a look. Look, you're shooting across 2 socks. You can hear it perhaps, but you don't necessarily see a spark. Now watch. Not, the hottest color spark, but look, you're sparking across to a tube that, even though there might have some gases on the inside passing through, look at how hot it gets over here to the metal by comparison. sparking to there. So could we also say that some of this has to do with static charges? But let's go to the end of that hose, and I don't want to put it onto near the computer components. And look, off the end where you would expect, across the gases perhaps, and I can hear it sparking a little bit, but nothing. Now look, how can that be? So, do you see the need to have to re-study what they're screwing up, what they're telling you that they're a little bit off their rocker there, you know, nice, good meaning people, but they haven't done enough testing, and so now you don't make any judgment calls, you just realize, how can that be? That's an insulator. Why is that doing that? And look, it's doing it here, and look, it's doing down there also. Can you see that down below? Let me get the shifting of it there. See if I can come to the other side. Can you see it? In two different spots there. There, now I know you can see it, right? Look down at the bottom. Look at the bottom of the hose down there. You see it? Is it coming on there? Let me change the lighting. Now look. Now you should be able to see it crystal clear, right? If you follow the hose down, watch it spark over there. Let me turn my headlamp off here and shut this other one off. Now it should be pretty clear, right? Not the one over here, that's the engine rocking and the light from the lamps. So now you see why you have to get off your asses to get yourselves out there to take a look. Obviously it helps if you have a vehicle that you don't have to be dependent upon, but even one that you have, you can start with a lawnmower. You got a lawnmower where you don't have to worry about that as much. You got an old motor, anything. Start playing around and help those engineers and scientists to realize that, you know, it's all great to try to, you know, make models and paradigms, but obviously they screwed a few things up. You know,